Do you think, almost as a side issue, the idea of the mad artist being the greater artist has had a terrible effect on a lot of people who thought that they had to be mad and have pushed themselves to extremes and have excused their own extreme behaviour? I'm an artist, I can behave badly.
I do. I think that the idea of being mad has been an alibi for bad behaviour, as though if you're mad, it isn't really you doing it. And it seems to me to be a consummate act of bad faith, this. And it goes along with our idealising artists and idealising the vocational life. In a culture like our own, it's perhaps not surprising that Sanity has such a bad press, that the mad have had all the best lines. Sanity has been presented as so unalluring, so uninspiring, that it has tended to become something that people have wanted to break out of. And the cure for sanity has usually been risk, and drugs have often tended to be the risk of choice. Through drugs of various kinds, the doors of perception, in Blake's words, can be cleansed. We can remove the inhibitions that have kept us sane and release our artistic inspiration. This, at least, is the hope. The assumption is clear. Sanity is our word for fear of life, for our fear of ourselves and our aliveness. It's madness we need to feel creative and alive.
I think primarily LSD was about the most profound experience I'd ever had at any time in my life, because LSD opened, or as Blake says, cleansed the doors of perception.
It's all to do with colour, it's all to do with round, with shape. Everything's colour. Everything, you know, oh, it must be to do with orange. Not only with orange. Oh, I haven't seen colour. I live in a monochromatic world. I can't use colour.
R.D. Laing was a great force in the 60s. He was very interested in artists and considered by a lot of people himself to be an artist. And he was of the view that the sanity as lived by, expressed by most people, was a way of living forced on them by a society which distorted them, and or by a family which distorted them. And they were just holding out for the fuller life, which sometimes erupted in what is called madness. But if you looked at that madness carefully, you'd find that this was a groping for a lost life, which in itself was a richer life.
Laing needed to distinguish between what he called false sanity and true sanity.
Yeah.
False sanity was basically compliance, adaptation, submission to the culture. Laing believed that to actually comply with the culture in its own terms was itself to be driven mad, and that one's only hope for renewal was to achieve what he believed was the true sanity within us. The true sanity within us would come out as madness, a strange behaviour. It was in the 60s, through the work of R.D. Laing and the anti-psychiatry movement, that sanity, a new kind of sanity, became fashionable. In Laing's view, the really disturbed people, the people we should most fear and be fearful for, were the normal, the successful. The what made people sick and uncreative was succeeding in a sick society. Madness was, in his view, the only way of coping in an alienating, ruthlessly competitive society. And artistic creativity was essential to this journey. A sick society, Laing believed, drove the authentic artist mad. And the so-called mentally ill and the artists who could risk madness were our only hope for the future. They were the people we needed to listen to. In his therapeutic communities in London, Laing and his colleagues encouraged his patients to regress in order to progress. And the journey was, in his words, towards a true sanity. In these therapeutic communities, people were encouraged to express themselves as creatively, as uninhibitedly as possible.
When I got to Ronnie, I found myself saying these words: I want to go back to before I was born and to come up again. And he said, well, I can help you.
Mary Barnes painted with her own excrement. And indeed Laing himself was considered by some to be the prophet of a new sanity that was itself a new art form. The defining characteristic of the new Sane was that they were non-compliant, vital, and capable of an intense, compassionate self-expression. So Lang makes a sort of paradoxical move, which is to say the people who appear to be sane are mad, and the people who are mad have achieved true sanity. And this true sanity means they've recovered their vitality, their life force, their reason to live.
Dr. Ronald David Lang is a British psychiatrist and author. His books, including The Divided Self, The Politics of Experience, and Knots, have won him a wide following.
All of these different states of consciousness are states of consciousness which are ephemeral, passing phenomena.
Dr. Lang?
Right?
This is one of the largest crowds we've had here for a speaker. Yet I feel we've been presented with a fumbling, rambling performance. I would like to ask, is this some social experiment? Is this something by example you're showing us? Or is this merely an example of the high stature you have for yourself and that you're presenting us with any old rotten baggage and expect us to applaud?
This has been taped by quite a number of people, and I would suggest that before you have the presumption and the fucking cheek to come on in that way, that you consider that you listen to it again, and then you might discover that there's more method in what I said and more organization in what I said than you have been able to hear.
The problem in the Lang vision was there were lots of people who went mad who didn't feel renewed. That there were lots of casualties of this approach, because Lang, I think because he was so frightened of madness, and rightly, tended to glamorize it, as if to say, going mad in and of itself will be good for you. Well, it isn't. For some people, it was absolutely terrible for them. So that it was as though Lang produced too demonized a world, too polarized a world. He didn't want sanity and madness to be interrelated. He wanted them to be quite different things. Although controversial, R.D. Lang's belief that consumer capitalism makes us sick and sabotages our inner creativity might be truer now than it was in the 60s. Britain's personal debt is increasing by £1 million every 4 minutes. 246 plastic transactions take place every second in the UK. The interest we pay on that debt is running at £6 billion every month. It's fair to say that our consumerism has spiraled completely out of control. That we are more preoccupied now by getting and spending than by anything else.
People are pushing you, and people are, you can't even look, you have to grab 7 bags first, then you have to look, and then decide, and I don't think I'll ever do it again.
Well, one of the things that this is a success culture, and it's a money culture. So do you see those two as being a bar to the development, the fuller development of people that you would like to see or would hope to see, the money and the success?
Yes, I think one of the things we might look to poetry for now, because poetry is marginalised, which is the best thing about it, it's freeing people actually now to be able to work their own way. People are only going to be poets now if they really want to be, because there's no money in it and there's very little glamour. That seems to be promising, because it seems to me the only payoff now of being a poet is writing a good poem. And that seems to me to hold within itself the possibility that people will be freer with their own thoughts. They'll be less preoccupied by being winning or by being charming or indeed by selling anything, because they've got nothing to sell. I think the new thing that might be happening is that the new sane artist will not be seeking recognition. That whereas the mainstream of artists are all going to be seeking recognition and fame and fortune, the new sane artist actually will need to dispense with precisely that quest in order to do their work.
Why is that important?
Because it frees you, once you relinquish the market, and that doesn't mean you don't earn your living, you have to earn your living, but once you relinquish one way or another the saleability of your art now, you're then freer, I think, to have your own thoughts, because insofar as you're interested in marketing what you do, you have to be preoccupied by a fantasy of what people want. It makes you compliant. It makes you inevitably servile to a fantasy of the audience. Whereas if you have no audience, that interest drops out.
But having no audience can often mean for some people that they haven't time to do the work they want to do. They have to work in a bank, teach, do jobs which tire them, and therefore when they come to do the work they want to do, the energy isn't left over to do it. So
I can see that, but I also think that may be now the deal, which is that people have to find other ways of earning their living if they're going to produce real art. It seems to me that there's a kind of sane art that, without ignoring the complexities and difficulties of life, make one feel that the project is worth it. I mean, art, it seems to me, is against suicide. And that's a value. It's like the thing Richard Ford says in The Sports Writer, when you lose all hope, you can always find some more. Well, I think that's what art is about, in a way. It's somewhere about hope. Even the most hopeless artists who are telling us how terrible life is are actually making us feel better when we know how terrible it is. So there's something about art, as you've said, that involves acknowledgements of difficult things.
But is art's job to make us feel better?
I think it could be one of art's jobs to make us feel that more life is worth having.
And so you think that Sanity is now the new project?
But I think Sanity is worth thinking about now, because there are so few articulated alternatives to either a glamorized version of madness or a despairing version of madness. So I think it might be worth producing descriptions of what about ourselves we think might be valuable, that is not a version of passion, possession, elsewareness, otherness, and so on. A culture that idealizes madness tends to idealize individuality. It encourages people to be strangely special rather than interestingly ordinary. But Sanity, unlike madness, may be more about the things we have in common. That we were once children, that we get ill, that we age, that we are unequally talented. Sanity perhaps should not be our word for the alternatives to madness. Indeed, often what we call madness is the very thing that destroys our creativity. There is often nothing more miserable and monotonous than being mad. A sane art would be one that always offers us the promise of more life.